Hey guys, welcome to Hook with Anime. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Let's begin. Chapter 15. Land of Water. 2 weeks later. After midnight. How long till we reach Kurigakure? Arlik said as he flew with his partner under the cover of darkness. Not too long now. We need to land somewhere to meet up with our shinobi team who have been keeping an eye on the Mizukage, Beatrice said. Got it, I see a clearing not too far, Arlik said, getting a nod from Beatrice. As the two Saiyans landed into the clearing, their mission was to retrieve a Saiyan infant from the hospital as they received a call from the CEO of the hospital, but they had to be cautious because of the Mizukage madness against bloodlines and the nation of Sadala revealing themselves to the world. They knew they had to be careful. Do you know where the meet-up is? Arlik said. Yeah, this way, Beatrice said, who began to run into the direction for the meet-up with Arlik following behind. 20 minutes later, as the two Saiyans arrived at the destination, which was a mile from Kurigakure, they felt unease. Something doesn't feel right, Beatrice said. Yeah, shouldn't the team be here by now? Arlik said, who was on guard. They should be here, stay on guard, Beatrice said, getting a nod from Arlik, who immediately turned his head behind himself. As Beatrice saw this, he tuned his senses to sense what gave his partner to turn in that direction. Who's there? Arlik said, seeing someone coming from the bushes and into the clearing. Just a friend from Sadala, the person said, who came walking into the moonlight, showing that they were wearing the Anbu uniform of Sadala. Where's the rest of your team? Beatrice said. Oh, they're not too far, they're just making sure the package is safe and secure, the person said. Arlik and Beatrice were on guard as they knew that the person in front of them was not from Sadala, as they met the team before they were sent to the Land of Water, and per protocol they knew what their friend's chakra felt like, and the person in front of them was not a friend, and seeing that the person was wearing their nation's armor, it could only mean that their friends were either captured or killed. So I take it it's just you two who came for the package, the imposter said as he looked around the two Saiyans as the moonlight showed that all three were males. Yes, we came for the infant and that's it, Arlik said as his sense told him that there were more enemies coming closer to their location from all directions. Is the infant still alive? Beatrice asked as he stared at the individual in front of him, who didn't seem concerned in the slightest. Why did he ask me that question? Isn't his mission to bring the freak to Sadala? The imposter thought to himself, but immediately knew why they asked. Wow, didn't realize you freaks saw right through my disguise so easily. What gave me away? The imposter said as he removed his mask. Your chakra gave you away, Arlik said, getting a confused look from their enemy. My chakra? So you freaks can sense chakra? Didn't know that. Doesn't matter now anyway. If you can sense chakra, then you know you're surrounded, and would be in your best decision to surrender and tell us everything about Sadala, and maybe we'll kill yous quickly. The Kiri Nin said as he smiled sadistically. What about the infant? Arlik asked. Don't worry about that freak, it was put death by the blade days ago, Kiri Nin said. Days ago? But we got the message hours ago, Beatrice said with shock. Yeah, gotta give credit to your friends' training, they were well trained, definitely worth the title of Anbu, but unfortunately this is our home, and with the purges happening we spotted them before they even knew what happened. Kiri Nin said as he drew a kunai as his friends walked calmly into the clearing, showing 5 more Kiri Nins. Beatrice, what do we do? Arlik said as he was angry that their friends were killed and the infant they were sent to retrieve was killed as well. I say we kill them for what they did, Beatrice as he clenched his fists. What yous freaks kill us? Laughing madly. Yous are cursed, yous have no powers, ha ha ha, what chances do you have of killing us? Kiri Nin said as he and his comrades laughed out loud. Normally, Beatrice, I would question that logic as it would lead to war, but considering this nation is coming after us anyway, and after what they did, Arlik stopped as he turned to look at his friend. What the hell? Arlik said. He teleported in front of the Kiri Nin, who was shocked at what just happened. Wah! Kiri Nin didn't get a chance to finish that word as Arlik punched him in the face, sending him flying back through a tree, and was impaled in the chest by the branch of the second before stopping. What th? The other Kiri Nins said before a light pierced 2 of the Kiri Nins in the head, killing them instantly. The other 3 immediately ran back into the woods so that they can regroup and think of a way to eliminate their enemies, but what they forgot in the panic was that the Saiyans can sense them. Keep one alive for interrogation, Beatrice said, getting a nod from Arlik as they teleported to where the Kiri Nin were. As the remaining members of the Kiri team kept running in the woods, they were thinking 1,000 thoughts, all of which brought more questions and confusion. How did they that? They were supposed to be cursed. The cursed don't have any powers. What was that light? It killed Hoga and Issa in a second. Damn it, Sama is impaled on a tree and Hoga and Issa are dead from some sort of light. The captives told us they had powers, but we didn't listen, and now we're going to die. All these thoughts prevented the shinobi from thinking clearly as they saw their enemies appear in front of them, stopping them and shocking them at once. Don't bother running away again. We'll just find you again now that we know what your chakra feels like, Beatrice said with a stern face. Which one is the leader, or did we kill him? If we did, then we have an offer for the three of yous, Arlik said, getting their enemies to look at each other for a moment. What's the offer? The Kiri Nin in front of the other two said. We'll let the two of yous go if you turn the other one to us for interrogation, Arlik said as the Kiri Nin looked at each other for a moment, thinking if they should accept the offer before looking back at their enemies. Okay, here's our answer. Water release. Water hail. The Kiri Nin said as they went through several hand signs before cupping their hands together and stretching them out, causing a large barrage of water bullets to come out of their hands and head straight towards the Saiyans, who used their superior reflexes and speed to dodge the bullets like it was nothing before teleporting behind the remaining Kiri Nin and firing an energy beam from their fingers at the two Kiri Nin's head behind the third, killing them instantly. Sama, Hoga, Issa and now Ishimoto and Takamoto, the lead Kiri said as he turned around and saw his dead comrades. Just before he could strike back at Arlik, Beatrice came up to him and performed a neck chop, knocking him cold. We did give them an offer and they choose to go out fighting. Come on Arlik, let's grab him and go, Beatrice said as he picked up the surviving Kiri before flying back home with Arlik following behind. Oh, I would just like to say that I use a name generator from Google for the names for some of the characters. Village of Sadala. General Mai's office, early afternoon. General was sitting at her desk with a serious face as she looked at the pile of paperwork that stood on her desk, towering over her with requests from other small nations wanting trade agreements, risk assessments and permission to build new villages in Sadala. But even though she was looking at the paperwork, her mind was on something else entirely different, as she looked at her advisors who also had serious faces. So what do we do? Yuko asked. It's obvious, is it not? We retaliate for what they did, Yoshito said in response. But if we retaliate, then we are going to war with a major nation, Yuko said as they heard how one of the shinobi teams was killed and the infant that was to be extracted also killed. I say we wait till interrogation is done with our guest before we proceed, Yuko said. And I say we retaliate. It doesn't matter if they're a major nation or not, they will be coming after us either to kill us or to take our lands, or both, Yoshito said before they heard a knock at the door. Enter, Mais said, hoping this might change things for her. The door opened, revealing Nat, who walked calmly, but like the other three in the room she also had a serious face as well. Nat, did you get anything from our guest? Mais said, getting a nod from Nat. Yes, thanks to our honesty seal, he was very informative. From what we gathered so far, the team he was in were supposed to kidnap our warriors and extract any information from them before killing them. This was an order from the Mizukage and the team of shinobi they captured they have been killed, as his team were the ones who did the deed. Nat said as she clasped her hand. Anything else, Nat? Mais said. Yes. Just before they left his office, the Mizukage sent several eagles to the other major nations requesting a cage summit to discuss our nation and what should be done about it 2 days ago. Nat said, fearing this would lead to another war that destroyed her home. That would explain why we're getting continuous signals from Konoha head doctor yesterday. The Hokage is clearly requesting to talk to you, Mais, about this cage meeting, and yet we thought it was to do with the alliance, Yuko said, getting a sigh from Mais, who stood up. Make sure our border defenses are up in case the Mizukage decides to send a Anbu team for reconnaissance. In the meanwhile, I'll head to Konoha to talk with Minato about what's happening. Mais said as she started to walk out of the office. Let us give you a team of warriors for your defense, Mais, Yoshito said. Don't need it, I already have the new transformation a week ago, Mais said, but saw a determined look from her advisors. Fine then, you two, what are your names and do yous have the new transformations? Mais said, pointing at two warriors down the hall. Who us? They said confusingly. Yes, Mais said back. Crest Kamizuru, General, the female warrior said as she saluted the general. And I'm Zuki Yuki, and yes we have both have the new transformations General, the second female warrior said. Good both of yous follow me, we're going to Konoha and don't pack we won't be gone for long, Mais said as the two warriors instantly followed the general who left the building. War is coming to Sadala isn't, Yuko said as she and Yoshido turned to Nat. Yes it's coming and I fear it won't be just the Mist Village we will be fighting, Nat said as the advisors both nodded. Konoha, Hokage's office. Several hours later, Minato was frantically pressing the button like a madman trying to get Sadala's attention as the village elders looked at him. How long are you going press that button before it breaks, Homura said as he sat on the sofa in the room enjoying some tea and biscuits with Kaharu. Till I get a response from them I will keep press window knocking, Minato said looking around till he saw Mais outside of his window tapping lightly with a serious face and point upward signaling to meet on the rooftop. Minato seeing this nodded leaving the elders in room alone. Well, that worked, Homura said. Yes, but the general face shows something else other than being annoyed, Kaharu said getting a nod from Homura. We'll wait for Minato to come back with his meeting. Looking at the table, did you take the last chocolate digestive? Homura said getting a small smile from Kaharu. Rooftop. Minato arrived on the rooftop with two Anbu beside him as he looked at the general with her two warriors who looked exhausted. Sorry for the annoyance, but I just got a request for a cage meeting from the... Minato said. From the Mizukage yeah we know, Mais said interrupting Minato who was half-lie shocked. Yes, but not just from the Mizukage I also got a request from the Reikage, Cage and the Tsuchikage as well as their daimyos too, Minato said getting a shock from Mais who hovered down onto the rooftop with her warriors. Okay I didn't know that Kiri Nin we captured probably didn't know about it, Mais said getting a look from Minato. Did you say you captured a Kiri Nin? Minato said getting a nod from Mais. Last night two warriors were dispatched to pick up a Saiyan infant from a team of our shinobis. Minato about to ask a question. Yeah I know we Saiyans can fly but because of the Mizukage madness it was best to send shinobi to retrieve the infant before passing the one over to the warriors so that our shinobi can resume their intel gathering. But when our warriors arrived at the rendezvous point they instead found a Kiri hunter team waiting for them after killing the hunters and bringing one back alive for interrogation we discovered. Mais stopped for a moment as it was the first time that Sadala lost a team and weight of responsibility was a first for her. They killed them didn't they? Minato said getting a nod from Mais. And the infant was put to death by the blade, Mais said getting a shock from Minato and the Anbu next to him. They killed the infant, one of the Anbu said. I take it it's the first time you lost a team wasn't it? Minato said. Yes it is. I've been the general for Sadala for about 10 years now since the Salkage retired, Mais said getting a puzzled look from Minato. When a shinobi from our nation becomes its leader they become the Salkage which is no different than your position as Hokage but when a warrior is selected instead they become a general instead, Crest said. Thank you miss. Minato said. Oh my name is Crest Kamizuru officer of Sadala, Crest said getting a nod from Minato. We also learned that 2 days ago the Mizukage sent eagles to the main nations requesting a cage meeting regarding our nation, Mais said. That was why I was pushing the button like crazy, sorry about it, but when me and Makoto went back home we took the only Tri-Kanai with us and I need to talk to you about this meeting, Minato said. I know that war is coming to Sadala either for our resources, our people and to kill us Saiyans, Mais said as she looked at Minato. There may be a way to avoid it, Minato said seeing Mais raise an eyebrow. Go on, she said. Me and the Fire Daimyo would like to invite you to this meeting with us so that you can plead for peace instead of war, Minato said as he looked down on the ground floor in front of the building and saw the Fire Daimyo and his guards walking towards them. Good timing. Mais the Fire Daimyo is right below us, please let me introduce you to him, Minato said getting a nod from Mais. As the Fire Daimyo walked towards the Hokage building to get a response from Minato from Sadala, as he walked towards them Minato jumped down from the rooftop and in front of the Daimyo causing his guards to go on high alert but backed after seeing it was just Minato. Ah Hokage just the person I was coming to talk to about Sadala, Daimyo said. Lord Daimyo, allow me to introduce you to General Mais Uchiha and her warriors from Sadala, Minato said, point to Mais and the Saiyans as they gently hovered down to meet them. Lord Daimyo, my name is Mais Uchiha, General of Sadala, and these are my bodyguards Crest Kamizuru and Zuki Yuki, Mais said as the fire daimyo was taking back as they landed gently on the ground. My word, so it is true that yous cursed can fly. I'm sorry Saiyans, the daimyo said as he regretted saying cursed to them. Don't worry about it, and as I much would like to discuss our upcoming alliance, I'm afraid something came up that requires our immediate attention, Mais said, getting a nod from the daimyo. Quite so, I take it Minato informed about the cage meeting, the daimyo said, getting a nod from Mais. We knew about the cage meeting beforehand, but we didn't know that the daimyos and yourself would be attending it as well, Mais said, getting a nod from the daimyo. This meeting is actually the first in which both cages and daimyos would meeting, as previous meetings would be either the daimyos or the cages, the daimyo said. We knew that such meetings would take place when we revealed ourselves, and we know that they might be coming after us, Mais said. Then why reveal yourselves? The daimyo asked. Because we knew we couldn't stay hidden forever, so we plan to reveal ourselves, but on our terms, and we choose the Fire Nation first because you would want peace instead of war, and that peace would benefit both parties. Mais said, getting a nod from the daimyo. Well then, do you accept our invitation to join us on this meeting so that we can avoid a war? The daimyo said. The nation of Sadala accepts your invitation, Lord Daimyo, Mais said. Chapter 16, Land of Iron, Mountain called Three Wolves. Day of the meeting. Oh, I will try my best with this chapter, but there is not a lot of info on the Land of Iron and their samurai, even from the show, so please keep that in mind. Within the mountain was a fort built by the samurais which also doubles as their home. It also serves as neutral territory for the first cage meeting when the hidden villages were being built in the 5 great nations. Now it was to hold the second meeting of the cages, and not only them but their daimyos as well. As such, the number of people coming from each nation was 15, the cage and his 2 bodyguards, the daimyo and their 10 bodyguards, and including the daimyo's advisor as well. Oh, the daimyos would obviously have more bodyguards. With 15 people coming from 5 different nations, the number should be at 75 for the meeting, and yet there was 80 people attending the meeting. The extra 5 people were guests brought over by the Hokage and the Fire Daimyo to take part in the meeting, as the meeting was discussing the sudden rise of another nation that has been harboring cursed people for centuries and, supposedly, has the first hidden village that was built long before the Senju and the Uchiha founded Konoha. Land of Iron, large meeting chamber. Oh, it's the same room as the 5 Cage Summit episodes, only a bit bigger to accommodate the daimyos and some of their bodyguards. In the room there was a large U-shaped table for the cages and a larger U-shaped table for the daimyos. Cages who seated in the innermost table were seated from the left were the 4th Raikage named A, and his nation's daimyo behind him. Next was the 3rd Tsuchikage named Onoki, and his nation's daimyo. Next was the 4th Hokage, Minato, as in his nation's daimyo, followed by the Cage named Rasa, and his nation's daimyo, and finally the 4th Mizukage, Yugura, and his nation daimyo. Facing the U-shaped table was a regular-sized table which held the Land of Iron leader, Mifune, general of the samurais. On the balcony surrounding the room and guarding the cages were the bodyguards, but seeing that the room was too small for everyone, they decided to let only the cage's bodyguards and the daimyo's 3 bodyguards, as well as the 5 guests hiding in cloaks that Konoha brought over, who were sitting behind Mifune waiting for Konoha to introduce them. I, Mifune, general of the Land of Iron, hereby begin this meeting of nations, even though it was the Mizukage and Water daimyo that called for such a meeting. Mifune said, getting nods from everyone as the Mizukage stood up. Thank you, General Mifune, and your country for allowing us to discuss these matters in peace, Yugura said, getting a polite nod from Mifune. The reason why I called yous over is to discuss this nation of Sadala, and if my intel is accurate, there are over 35,000 or more cursed creatures they are hiding, as well as numerous freaks that have taken refuge. Yugura said as the other cages gave him the stink eye. I thought Sadala's Saiyans were at 9,000. How can there be so many? Wait. Of course, Sadala military is split into 2 forces, warriors and shinobis, and I didn't ask exactly how many Saiyans they actually had, Minato thought to himself. I don't know what you beef is with bloodlines, Yugura, but watch your tongue, Onoki said, not liking the Mizukage. I will try to curb my tongue, Tsuchikage, but I didn't want to be here, but my daimyo insisted on this meeting and it was his idea anyhow. If it were up to me I would have just killed them all and be done with it, but alas, my daimyo had over ideas such as sharing the resources that this nation possesses, Yugura said. I called for this meeting because of the purges you have been making would have led us vulnerable to an attack from someone else, but if all 5 nations were involved in taking over this nation, then we can split the resources evenly between the nations and to prevent another war between us, considering we'll all be on the same side when we take this continent for ourselves. The water daimyo said as the Raikage, Cage and their daimyos including the earth daimyo took a minute to think on the offer, while the Hokage, Tsuchikage and the fire daimyo had a disapproving look on their faces. The rumors I've been hearing so far suggests that the continent is several times larger than our own. If the lightning nation were to get involved, then we demand access to an even amount of the resources, but we also demand that any living Hyuga be turned over to us if the rumors are true about what they are hiding. The Raikage said, getting a nod from the lightning daimyo. I think we can agree to that. Yugura, water daimyo said, looking at the Mizukage, who simply nodded. The wind nation would agree to be involved as well, the wind daimyo said, getting a nod from the Cage. As does earth nation too, earth daimyo said. Absolutely not, Tsuchikage said with anger as he got looks from everyone in the room. What do you mean no Onoki? Earth daimyo said as he was confused by his Cage answer. I'm saying the hidden stone village will not take part in this senseless slaughter, Onoki said as the earth daimyo looked at him with an angry look. Onoki, look here, this nation of Sadala, or whatever it is called, is breaking the law that all nations follow by not killing these cursed creatures but instead also offering them refuge. They must be held accountable for. Earth daimyo said, but got an angry look from Onoki. I will not kill my granddaughter Fasha, Onoki yelled out, getting a surprised look from Minato and shocking everyone there. Wait, you know your granddaughter alive? Minato asked, letting Onoki calm down for a moment. Yes, I know she's alive. The moment she was born I refused to hand her over to the head doctor so that they can put her to sleep, so he took me somewhere private and told me about Sadala and why it existed. I didn't believe him at the time till when night came and I saw 2 individuals flew down calmly and revealed themselves as warriors of Sadala. They even showed their tails to me, and the lack of chakra their bodies emitted was proof that what the head doctor told me was true. So I gave them Fasha and a warning that should I find out that they lied that I would destroy them in a heartbeat. Wait a minute, Minato, how did you know that she is alive? Onoki said, looking at Minato, who took a deep breath before answering. I know this because my son told me she was not only alive but also a good friend of his, and so did General Mais, the leader of Sadala, Minato said, getting shocks from everyone in the room. Wait a minute, Minato, how do you know that Sadala has a general and how is your son friends with her? Onoki said, staring at Minato looking for an answer. Because nearly 2 years ago Kushina and I banished our son and planned for Jiraiya to take him somewhere to spend the rest of his days in peace and quiet away from all this. However, on the night he was banished, 2 warriors from Sadala picked him up and brought him to Sadala. After 6 months or so I began to hear rumors of a hidden nation and began to send people out there in the hopes of find them and hopefully finding Naruto. Minato said, stopping for a moment as he thought back at how stupid the plan was. You actually banished your son, Minato? Onoki said with surprise and shock, seeing Minato nodding his head in confirmation. What does banishing his son have to do with Sadala? The Raikage asked, getting puzzled looks from everyone in the room. What, yous didn't know that his son was born cursed? Onoki said, shocking everyone. Yous really didn't know, but yous have your own spies, surely they would have told yous about him. I mean, come on, he's the Cage's son, surely you would have kept a file on him or some plan to kidnap him for some sort of ransom. Minato said, getting the other Cages to lower their heads at how lazy their intelligence officers have been. Minato, ignore them for now, please continue, Onoki said, getting slight nods from the Cages. Me and a team went over to scout the place for anything that might to lead Naruto, but as soon as we made landfall we immediately took cover as a patrol of 30 feet cursed flew right past us. Minato stopped as he heard laughter coming from the Cages except for Onoki. Surely you are making this up, Minato, Raikage said with a chuckle. Everyone knows that these cursed creatures can't fly or even have chakra, they can only turn into monsters on a full moon, the Cage said chuckle. He speaks the truth, so shut up, Onoki said with a glare as everyone in the room looked at him. I saw them fly away with Fasha with my own eyes, so I have reason to believe that they can do more than just that. Am I right, Minato? Onoki said, getting a nod from Minato. My team and I stopped to make camp between the forest and the desert, and during the night we were woken up by loud roars from the desert, and from what we saw was nothing short of a nightmare. Minato taking a deep breath. Apparently they use the desert to train themselves to control their giant ape forms, with success as we heard them say. Finally got it, showing us it was possible for them to control their giant forms. Minato said as the cages were shocked by this information except for the daimyos who were confused. I don't understand, why is that something to be shocked at, the water daimyo said, getting a sigh from Yagura. Because my daimyo, when a cursed transforms into a giant ape, their power rivals a tailed beast. Minato, how many did you see that night? Yagura said with concern. We saw and confirmed about 70 giant apes with what appears to be their instructors floating above them, Minato said, getting seriously looks from the cages and shocking ones from the daimyos. Yagura, how many cursed did your intel say there were? Reikage said with fear. 35,000 or more. It would seem that my daimyo was right to involve the other nations in this matter, Yagura said with anger. I think the best course of action would be to make peace with this nation instead of going for war, Minato said, getting looks from everyone in the room. Agreed, Onoki said with a smile. Wait a moment, why do you even want to make peace with this nation? Yes, their numbers of cursed are in the tens of thousands and that they can fly, but we still have the advantage. We can take over this nation and reap the rewards, considering that they need the full moon to transform, which only comes once every 2 weeks, and even then it depends if it's a clear sky. Rasa said as his daimyo nodded. They don't just have Saiyans. Minato stopped as he just blurted the name, Saiyan. Saiyans, what is that? Reikage said. Is that what they call themselves? Saiyans, what a silly name for a disgusting creature, Yagura said, getting a sigh from Minato, who decided it was time to reveal his guest. Saiyans, Saiyan, and is what they called themselves after I've met their general and formed an alliance with them a few weeks ago and even invited them to this meeting in hopes of avoiding a war. Minato said as he stood up and waved at them, come over. As he did this, everyone in the room was in shock and looked over to where Minato was waving at as the figures moved towards the desks. As they did this, their guards were on high alerts, ready to pounce should the cages or the daimyos be under attack. As the figures moved closer, 4 of them stopped where they were and removed their cloaks, revealing themselves and their tails. The 4 Saiyans were Cress Kamizuru, Zuki Yuki, Ikika Hitaki and Sora Hyuga. As everyone saw the 4 female Saiyans who revealed themselves, they waited for the 5th to show themselves before they could say anything, as the 5th stopped walking till they reached the center of the room where everyone could see them. Well, I guess it's time to show myself. Would you be so kindly as to introduce me, Minato? The figure said, getting a nod from Minato. Everyone, let me introduce you to Mais Uchiha, general of Sadala's armada, Minato said as Mais removed her cloak, revealing herself to everyone in the room, none more than Onoki, who recognized Mais immediately. You, Onoki said as he pointed at her. It's good to see you again, Tsuchikage, it's been too long, Mais said as she gave him a polite bow, as everyone was confused at what was going on. Fasha, is she okay? Onoki said, hoping for good, and saw a smile coming from Mais. Relax, she's safe and sound and is good friends with my daughter and Minato's son Naruto, Mais said, getting a sigh of relief from the Tsuchikage. Onoki, what is the meaning of this? How do you this woman? The Earth Daimyo shouted out, causing Onoki to look at him with anger in his eyes, causing the Daimyo to shiver in fear. She is the cursed, Saiyan I gave Fasha to in hopes of saving her, and I'm glad it was a good choice, Onoki said as he turned back towards Mais. Minato, what are you thinking inviting this woman to meeting of this? Surely I don't think your daimyo was happy with it, Reikage said. Actually it was my idea, Reikage, considering the meeting was discussing their nation, which operates by their own laws as does any nation on this world of ours. The Fire Daimyo said, getting looks from the other daimyos. Quite so, Fire Daimyo, and considering that our nation was formed 300 years ago as a place for those wishing to get away from you pesky lot and your troublesome wars. Mais said, getting some angry looks from the cages and the daimyos except for Minato, Onoki and the Fire Daimyo, who just sighed knowing it was true. Watch your tongue, woman, or you won't be leaving her alive, Reikage said with anger, making Mais bodyguards look at him with readiness except Mais, who simply looked at him with a wide grin, itching for a fight. Reikage, I would like to remind you where you are and that fighting is prohibited here, Mifune said, getting the Reikage to calm down a bit. My apologize, General Mifune. Now then, Mais, if you want peace with the Land of Lightning, then hand over all of your Hyugas over to us and maybe we won't attack. The Reikage with a smile but saw Mais merely sigh at what he said. You really are a muscle-bound fool who learned nothing from his predecessor who started the last war because he wanted the sealing techniques from the Uzushiogakure and the Hyugas Byakugan. If you keep going like he was, you could end up like the fool he was. Mais didn't get the chance to finish the sentence as the Reikage used his lightning release and punched Mais in the face, sending her right across the room, nearly missing the water daimyo, and through the wall into the hallway and into another room that was the barracks for the samurais, who were lucky not to get hurt when Mais crushed into the room. As Mais crashed into the room, she quickly shoved her fist into the ground, stopping her movement and letting her feet touch the ground, giving her more breaks to stop herself from the Reikage's punch. Mais' bodyguards would have reacted quicker so that they could catch their general, but the Reikage's lightning release was much faster than theirs, so instead they went after the general while leaving everyone in the room a moment to realize what just happened. Damn, was not expecting him to do that. Rather impulsive of him, Mais thought to herself as she stood back up and rubbing her cheek, feeling the bruise and noticing blood on her hand from the Reikage's punch. Instead of feeling anger at what the Reikage did, she instead felt a hunger for more. Hell of a punch, Reikage, Mais said with a smile. The samurais in the barracks who saw her come crashing into the room were on guard as they drew their swords and aimed at half of them at Mais, fearing an attack, and the other half at the hole in case of another attack. Once the samurais heard Mais say that it was the Reikage who punched her, those who aimed their swords at her immediately aimed it at the hole but aimed back at her when they saw 4 individuals teleport in front of them surrounding Mais. General, are you okay? Aikika said with worry. I'm fine, Aikika. Come, let's head back to the room and clear some things up before we leave, Mais said with a smile. Back in the room, voices could be heard shouting at the Reikage for what he did, the water daimyo shouting at his Mizukage for not defending him, but all he got was a wicked smile from Yagura, who knew what was going to happen. Minato, Onoki and Mifune were shouting at the Reikage for his reckless behavior, but all they got from the Reikage was nothing as he saw Mais walking back into the room with a bruised cheek and big grin on her face. As this was happening, all the bodyguards swooped down and stood next to the cages and daimyo ready to defend them at any moment. Got to admit, Reikage was not expecting that punch, should have been more on guard, Mais said as she stopped only a feet away from the Reikage with only his guards blocking them. Don't you ever insult my father again, Reikage with anger as he stared at Mais, who stared back. Last chance, Reikage. Are you sure you want to down this path? Mais said with a smile. Yes, I do, Reikage said with determination. Very well then, Mais said, taking a step back. All cages and daimyos, please side with your nation before the Reikage declares what he is going to say, Mais said, getting the cages to look at the daimyos before looking back at the Reikage. Water is with lightning, spoke Yagura. Wind is with lightning, spoke Rasa. Earth is with, looking back at the earth daimyo who nodded, is with lightning, spoke Onoki with sadness. I'll find Fasha and get her to safety. I won't lose any more of my family, Onoki thought to himself. Fire is with Sadala, spoke Minato with his daimyo who nodded in agreement. You have the floor, Reikage. Declare what you are going to say, Mais said. Lightning is at war with Sadala. Chapter 17, Konoha. Hours after the summit, Hokage office. Minato had just teleported the last of the fire daimyo's bodyguards, including Mais and her group. Minato wandered behind his desk and sat down with a serious face as he hoped that the summit would bring peace, but instead they were now at war with the other 4 great nations, all thanks to the Reikage who could never control his temper. The daimyo took a seat in front of the desk with a look of sadness as there was another war and that would mean a loss of life that could have been avoided. Mais sat down next to him with a face of guilt as she believed herself responsible for what happened. Hokage, daimyo, I would like to apologize for what happened, Mais said, getting a puzzled look from Minato and the daimyo. Why are you apologizing, General? This war was caused by the Reikage. The moment he said he wanted the Hyugas, he really didn't learn anything from his predecessor, the daimyo said. Agreed, Mais, you did not start this war, and like you said, the Raikage learned nothing from his father, as they both still want jutsus and the Byakugan. The moment he punched you, which I'm amazed you could withstand such a punch, the moment he punched you was the moment any chance of peace was gone. Minato said, getting a smile from Mais. Thank you. Now then, what do we do about this war? Mais said, getting nods from Minato and the daimyo, who stood up. Hokage, the resources of this nation is at your command. If you would excuse me, but I'm headed back to the fire capital to get the paperwork sorted out. Let's hope we can end this war quickly and with far fewer casualties than the last one. The daimyo said as he gave both Minato and Mais a polite bow before leaving the room with his bodyguards. As he left, the elders of the village entered the room, making Minato question just how they knew he would be back so quickly. Minato, how was the summit? Koharu said. Did everything go as you and the daimyo wanted? Homura said. We're at war with the other great nations, Minato said with serious that the elders saw with distaste. What happened? Koharu said. The Raikage wanted some measure of peace with my nation on the condition that I would give him all the Hyugas, Mais said. That fool is still after the Byakugan. I hope you said no to him, General, Danzo said. I told him he was acting the fool like his father was, and he punched me for saying that, Mais said, getting a serious look from the elders. Please tell me that was a lie, Homura said, getting a no response from Minato. How did that fool get to be a Kage is beyond me, always talks with his fists, Danzo said. Anbu, Minato said as several Anbu appeared in front of him. Yes, Lord Hokage, Dragon Anbu said. Implement war protocol. As of this moment the fourth shinobi war has begun. Also inform Fugaku that we will be needing his clan help in this war, Minato said as he heard shocks from the Anbu as they left to tell the shinobi clans so that they can prepare. Minato, surely you jest, we don't there. Danzo stopped as Minato gave him a threatening look. Mais, any help you can give us is much appreciated, Minato said. Right, I can give you 7,000 warriors that can get here in a day or two, but they would need some places to rest and eat. I would also tell them to take orders from you shinobi forces, as this will be the first war that Sadala had since its founding. I would like to keep my shinobi forces, seeing that Water Nation is only a week away from us and the other nations would take much longer to reach us. Mais said. I take it you want the shinobi forces from the Hidden Mist to be surprised at what your forces can do, Minato said, getting a nod from Mais. If you want, I could send someone to help coordinate your forces, Minato said. Much appreciated, Hokage. Who were you thinking of sending? Mais said. I'll send Shikaku Nara over, Minato said, getting a puzzled look from Mais. Are you sure it's wise sending your Jonin commander? I mean, wouldn't it be better keeping him here to coordinate your forces instead of mine? Mais said. Don't worry, Shikaku isn't the only strategist we have here and he can help your forces deal with enemy, Minato said. Thank you, Minato. I just hope the other nations enjoy the surprise we got for them when they come knocking, Mais said with a smile, as did Minato. What are you talking about? Koharu said. The other nations know that Sadala is full of Saiyans, but they only know that they can fly and can control the giant ape transformations, and that's just about it. They have no idea that they can move much faster, teleport and shot energy bombs from their hands. Anything else I should know about? Mais. Minato said, getting a sheepish grin from Mais. Well, there may be something else that we can do too, Mais said as she tried to avoid looking at Minato but found herself trying to avoid looking at the elders as well. What else are you hiding from us except for the population of 40,000 Saiyans you have there? And I'm pretty sure your warrior forces is much higher, isn't it? Minato said, looking at Mais with intent, as did the elders. Fine, I'll talk, Mais said with a pout. Our warrior forces are actually near 13,000 and our shinobi forces is just below that, and thanks to your son we've found a more powerful transformation than the great ape as well as another, but that form has a requirement. Mais said, getting a puzzled look from everyone in the room. What do you mean you found another transformation thanks to Naruto? Minato asked, puzzled. Your son in class said to his instructors if it was possible while in our great ape form to shrink it down so that we're not a big target, and during that very night the instructor discovered it was entirely possible, and not only does this new form make us more powerful but we can transform into it without a moon or the moon orb technique. Mais said, getting looks of pure shock from everyone in the room. Please tell me you're lying, Homura said, getting a smile from Mais. I'm not lying. This new form makes a single warrior 10 times stronger than the great ape and we are still in control, Mais said, getting a look from Danzo which said, can you prove it? You want proof? Mais said, getting nods from everyone in the room. Mais got up from her seat and stood in the center of the room before taking a deep breath. As she channeled her energy outward, everyone saw a white flame appear around her. Is that your energy? Minato said, getting a nod from Mais, who began to access that form. Mais' arms began to grow more brown hair, a lot more. Her tail began to become more bushier and slightly longer. Her hair on her head began to grow a bit more but retained its dark look. As her body changed, her power began to shake the room, causing splinters into floor to break apart and rise. The windows shattered from how intense her power was becoming. What's going in here? General, Sora said as she and her bodyguards entered the room, as did several Anbu and shinobi who were feeling the power coming off the general, and it wasn't just them. Hyuga compound. We're at war, Hiyashi said with concern as the Anbu told him as he was training his daughter Hanabi. Yes sir, please make sure your clan is ready. The Anbu stopped as he felt the general's power, and not only him but also Hiyashi and Hanabi, who had their Byakugan on and turned their heads towards the immense power. That power is growing. I never felt anything like that. Who could have so much power, father? Hanabi said with fear. Wait, is that the general of Sadala? How could she have more power than the Yamanaka flower shop? A potted flower can be heard smashing on the floor as Inaki's wife looked at him. Inochi, what's the matter? She said with worry as Inaki's face was full of fear. That power, it can't be, he said. What power? Inochi, what's happening? She said with worry. That power is rising, it's rising even higher than the Hokage's home. Kushina was in the living room watching Natsumi practicing her sealing arts and trying to snap her dar out of her superior than everyone else attitude before he face became one of worry as she saw her daughter's face become one of fear. Natsumi, sweetie, are you okay? Kushina said as she rushed over to check on her. That power, Natsumi said with fear while someone else's was in anger. How can there be a power greater than Hokage's office? The fox, a shinobi said as Mais has finished transforming. How can you have more power than the fox? Minato said as he slowly came back to his senses. What do you mean more power than the fox? It's like there's a whole army of tailed beasts in the room, a shinobi said as he and the other shinobi drew their blades and kunais but felt his hands tremble from the immense power that the general of Sadala was showing. Everyone put your weapons down now, Minato said but saw none of them obeying him. I said everyone put your weapons down, Minato yelled out, causing the shinobi to regain their sense and put their weapons away. Mais, are you still in control? Minato said as Mais turned around and looked at him. But of course Hokage, I'm in complete control, Mais said as she grabbed her chair that flew towards the wall but remained intact and brought it back to the desk to sit back down, but not before powering down but still remaining in her transformed state. Incredible, I can feel your power dropping but you're still in that state, Minato said with curiosity as his mind began to think on the upcoming war as a smile drew across his face, getting everyone's attention. Minato, what are you smiling about? Danzo said with a curiosity mind as well. I was thinking on how we are going to win this war and from the general's transformation, and if I'm right then her entire warrior army has already began training to achieve this form, am I right? General, Minato said, getting a nod from Mais. But of course it has become the new requirement for our cadets to graduate, Mais said. I take it you began to implement this rule since before my team and I were discovered by yous, Minato said, getting a nod from Mais. That explains why during the night some of your instructors told some of the cadets to force themselves smaller when they transformed. You also mention another form but that has a requirement. Care to elaborate on that? Minato said, knowing that even if they told him what the transformation does it would be entirely different to ask how to achieve it, and even then it would require a Saiyan to achieve, not a human. As he looked at Mais he saw anger in her eyes which got him worried. That form, Minato, was achieved by your son when he was outside in the rain, hitting raindrops as fast as he can while he was remembering on how he was banished from this village. Mais said as Minato felt sadness for banishing his son, all for a plan to make him safe somewhere else away from Konoha and the shinobi world to live out his life in peace and quiet, but at last it failed as Sadala forces were waiting for him, but it did lead him to finding out about a hidden country with allies who they thought died decades. While he was training, we could feel the anger in his movements and his power raising till he could no longer contain his anger and unleashed it, causing his hair to go complete gold and his eyes changed to green. The power he emitted was intense, and considering he was still a cadet, his power just grew past the giant ape form. Mais said as Minato was shocked to hear that his son achieved this power from anger he felt as he was banished by his family. Minato, hearing this, lowered his head in shame upon hearing this. How is my son doing, Mais? Minato said, hoping for some good news. He's just like any other kid his age, only he's not getting stars from people like he was a monster. Instead they just look at him like he's just some normal kid playing with friends. Mais said, getting Minato's head to raise up with a smile. Thank you, General. Now then, back to the matter at hand. Mais, is there anything else you can think of that would help end this war with as few casualties as possible? Minato said as Mais took a moment to think on it before coming to an answer. Well, the first is that the enemy might not attack the warrior forces if they found out they related to them, and the good chances of them finding out if they are is actually quite high, but then again some of the enemies might ignore that and just strike them, but it will cause hesitation on the battlefield. Mais said, it may cause some of them to defect and come over to our side instead. Koharu said as she smiled, knowing the chances of Konoha to win this war was quite high after the general's demonstration. Agreed. Also can give your warriors orders to capture the daimyos, as well as their ability to fly would give them an advantage, Homura said, smiling as well. You beat me to that one. I was also thinking on giving them orders to raid the enemy villages' libraries, as Sadala's knowledge of jutsus is quite low and this war would allow us to acquire a few, and considering we're allies we would be happy to share the spoils with Konoha. Mais said, getting a wicked smile from Danzo, who's stepping in the discussion. Can you also acquire their forbidden scrolls as well? He said as Mais looked at him with a cautious glare. If we know where they are, then yes, but as you know, every village hides their forbidden scroll in different locations, Mais said. Then we should exchange intel so that you can find them more easily, Danzo said as he began to see the outcome of the war and what the Saiyans can do. I suppose then the only real problem would be the cages and their jinchurikis. Minato said, causing everyone in the room including himself to laugh out loud. Good one, Minato, Mais said as she contained her laughter. So we can count on your forces to take care of that problem for us, Minato said, getting a nod from Mais. I have some Uzumaki sealing masters come over to make sure they don't access the tailed beast's power when we capture them, but then again I think one of them would require a completely new seal. I think that Jinchuriki is the Casecage son Gaara if my intel is correct. Mais said, getting some curious looks from the elders and Minato. What do you mean a completely new seal? Minato said, getting a funny look from Mais. Seriously, what are you Anbu doing if they can't get you the intel on who's the Jinchuriki from another nation? From my intel, the Casecage sealed the one-tailed into his son before he was even born, causing the death of his mother, and the Casecage blaming Gaara for it despite it was entire his fault that she died, so he tried to have Gaara assassinated, but each attempt failed because of Gaara's sand defending him automatically each time. Mais said, getting a shock from Minato except the elders, who only looked at each other. The fool should have waited for his son to be born before sealing that raccoon into him, perhaps then his wife should still be alive, Koharu said. Exactly, and not only that, but it would seem that the seal is faulty, causing the raccoon to torment Gaara with endless nightmares should he fall asleep, causing the poor child to stay awake for days on end, causing him to be driven mad with bloodlust just to stop the nightmares. Mais said, causing everyone in the room to think on how stupid the Casecage was when designing the seal in the first. Anything else to think over before we get ourselves ready? Minato said, getting a nod from Mais. I just have one little bit request before we get ready, Mais said, getting puzzled looks from everyone in the room. And what might that be? Minato said, seeing a wicked smile coming from Mais. I call first dibs on the rakeage. Thank you for watching, guys, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel.